Yeah, hi, it's Tilda from the Orry Mill. This is the introduction to lace knitting. And yeah, we're just waiting for another person. So just see if they might pop on. So yeah. Okay, well, let's just get started. So yeah, it's recorded and you can have access to it afterwards. So yeah. So first of all, I'll go into what is lace knitting. And then we'll pop into what is lace yarn. Next, it will be, we're going into the yarn over, knit two together, knit, slip, slip, knit, knit one, slip one, knit two together. These are all kind of specific for lace knitting, these abbreviations. I'll go into details. So then I will show you how to do a lace cast on, because sometimes the long tail cast on might not be the best option, even though that's my kind of go-to for most knits. Then we're going into how to read a lace pattern and how to read a lace chart. Then we're also going to see how do you actually measure your tension in lace knitting. And I'm also going to explain to you what a lifeline is. It's very handy for lace knitting. And we're going to talk about blocking and also where to start. So, what is lace knitting? Lace knitting is a style of knitting where knitters create holes, kind of stable holes in a fabric. It's kind of tend to be kind of an intricate fabric, and they are carefully arranged in patterns in this knitted fabric. Traditionally, lace was used for shawls. You might have heard about the wedding ring shawl. It is so fine that it can go through, it can basically be pulled through your wedding ring. It's done in the finest lace yarn. Today you can find elements of lace knitting in most items. You can see them in garments, you can see them in hats, you'll find them in, obviously you still have the shawl, but you'll find them, you'll find it all over in every part of knitting, the knitting world now. Some people argue that true lace is really only when you have patterns on each row of in a lace pattern. However, that is not really true. Lace knitting is just kind of artfully arranged holes in a garment or lace shawl. So, what is lace yarn? Lace yarn is a very, very fine yarn. So, the likes of the kit silk case, that's a light you can see is almost kind of string-like. We have a couple of lace yarns in here, so this is one of the most popular ones. Because lace yarn is so fine, it's kind of, and so intricate, it's kind of seen as the pinnacle of or lace knitting is seen as the pinnacle of knitting. So it tends to be kind of more experienced knitters that are using lace weight yarn and also doing lace. However, it is to become much more common. The lace yarn is also in designs, and it actually sometimes just doubling it up to kind of make a thicker yarn, and you will even find it that it's stranded with other yarns. So for example, there's one over here. You can strand it together, and you can then start playing with colors and textures, which is very interesting. So yeah, the most popular lace yarn I have in here is really the kit silk piece. So let's move on to the yarn over. Well, actually, no, let's move on to her lace cast on. So I'm going to show you the lace cast on. For some people, this is the cast on they tend to do. So you create a slip knot and you twist your yarn in a kind of a loop and just pull your yarn out. Place it on your needle and just pull it tight. So you place your needle into your stitch as if you're knitting. You're then winding your yarn round and you're then bringing your yarn back out and you're just putting this loop on your needle and then pulling it. Not too tight. So again, in the needle in through your stitch as you're knitting, and then you're pulling your yarn out. You are basically knitting this stitch and then you're just sliding it onto your needle. And again, show you. So needle into the stitch, yarn round needle and bringing it back out and then over your needle. So this is, I've seen a lot of people actually using this method just in general, but this one is the lace cast on. And it's creating like quite a fine, not a too bulky edge down here. I have a wee sample over here as well where I was going to show you. I have started knitting some lace with it. So this one here, this one is your lace cast on edge. It's a little bit rough looking just because it's the start of the knitting. But if you can compare that with the long tail cast on, you can see this is a much more kind of bumpy cast on. The long tail cast on is great for if you're doing hats and something that needs to be really stretchy, but for lace where you want it a little bit finer and you want it a little bit holy, then this one is really good. So let's move on to show you the lace pattern. So I have one here which is the Gothic shawl. This is by Tin Can Knit, and it's basically a beginner lace cowl or scarf. So this is quite small. I have it actually enlarged. Initially you're gating what materials. So this one is knitted in a worsted weight or an Aran weight yarn. You're using 5mm needles, and they have given you the tension in stockinette stitch, which is quite good because again, knitting the tension in lace. So here, so knitting the tension in the lace is a little bit, you have to do a little bit of a calculation when you do that. Again, they give you what you need, all the kind of notions you need. So here we have the pattern, and I have actually blown this one up. Just give me a second, I think the blown up is coming here. So I actually skipped a little bit of an important step here, so we will do this while we are doing the pattern. So I think you can read that now here. So again, you have a row, it's knit two together. That should be quite straightforward. Then you have something called a yarn over. So the different kind of terminologies in lace knitting is that you have something called a yarn over. It is basically I'll show you here. Sorry, I'm just getting this a bit tangled up. So a yarn over is what creates the holes. So in this pattern here, this is the Gothic shawl pattern. You have your knit two, then you knit two together, and then you have your yarn over. So your yarn over is basically just swinging your yarn kind of to the front and then over your needle and back to the back. If you are a thrower, which the UK is, you have something called a yarn forward. It's the same thing as the yarn over but the main thing here is that you're only using the yarn forward if the next stitch is a knit stitch, because if you do yarn forward and do your knit stitch, then you can see you have created an extra stitch. So this is what's called kind of the yarn over. So if you some patterns written for the throwing, which is the UK way, will have, instead of the yarn over, they will have the yarn forward and then a knit afterwards. Or if it is if you have a purl, the next stitch is a purl, you will have something called a yarn round your needle. So I'll just show you that one. So again, you'll put yarn forward round your needle and back to the front, and then you can do your purl stitch. So you can see this one, the wee loop is what's created that extra stitch. So if you did your purl stitch, you have the knit two together here, the stitch you created, and then your purl stitch. So when you have these increases, which is your yarn over, yarn forward, or yarn round your needle, you also have the correspondent decrease, because if this is to stay straight, if you're reducing one stitch, you also have to increase one stitch. So then you have the knit two together, which is obvious, and that there's only really one version of the knit two together. Then you have the other. So knit two together again, I'm just going to show you, because it's important what way the stitches lie on top. So knit two together, you have the left stitch lying on top of the right stitch, if you can see here. If you want the right stitch to lie on top of the left stitch, you have three different ways of doing that. You have what's called an SSK, that is called slip, slip, knit. So the way you do that one is that you slip knitwise, slip the stitch again, so that's your two slip, and now you want to knit this together. So you go back in with your left hand needle, so you're now got the two needles on, and then you'll knit those two together, and now you have your right stitch on top of your left. So that's one way of doing it. I will go back again and show you. So the SSK is what they use in this pattern, as you can see. A lot of UK patterns they do the slip one, knit one, and pass slip stitch over. So it's K1, or it's SL1, K1, PSSO. It's quite a long abbreviation. I think I have it in. Have I got it in this one? No. But yeah, so if you slip one, knit one, and then you pass a slip stitch over. Again, your right stitch lies on top of your left stitch. And the third way of getting the right stitch, or at least make it look like the right stitch, is on top of the left stitch, or no, it is actually, is you can knit two together through the back loop. So instead of going in like this way, you just go in from the back and you knit here. So again, you have your right stitch on top of your left stitch. However, in this one, you're actually twisting your stitch. So if you don't like this twist, I would recommend you either do the slip, slip, knit, or the slip, knit, or slip one, knit one, pass slip stitch over. It's so long that it's almost a tongue twister. So let me try and show you these two again. So the slip, slip, knit is knit one, or slip, slip one, slip the second one, go back into your stitch with the left hand needles, and then knit the stitch. And again, the slip one, knit one, pass slip stitch over is slip one, knit one, and pass slip stitch over. Sometimes you then have to knit 3 together. And again, it's often done in the way that you slip one, knit 2 together, and then you pass the slip stitch over. Then it lies quite in a nice, lovely order, and almost like a point. So I'll repeat that one. So slip one, knit 2 together, and pass your slip stitch over. And it comes up in a lovely point. That is actually how I got this point here. That is the 3 together. And because I'm reducing 2 stitches in that, I have 2 increases on either side. So now when I've explained all these ones, I will be back to looking at the pattern. So I'm just trying to get it into so you can see it. So this is the pattern that I have been just briefly knitting a little bit up of here. So let me I'll just take some of these ones back, and then I'll show you the So this pattern is taking you step by step through every single line. So you got your 2. So now you should be really familiar with these ones. You got your knit 2 together. So knit 2 together. Your yarn over, or see, you can see the knit 1 is just after. You can do your yarn forward and then knit 1. Then they have the SSK, which is your slip, slip, knit. So here you got your slip, slip, knit. In this bracket, if you can see, this is in the bracket, so this is a repeat. So you got these repeats here of these wee pointy, it's called Gothic shawl because it has this kind of Gothic window shape. So these window ones are the ones that's in the bracket. So the repeat is slip, slip, knit, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, and knit 2 together and knit 1. So here you have your SSK is a decrease, your yarn over is an increase, another increase, and then a decrease. So you can see all the math stacks up, and then you have your first kind of edge bit. It's knit 2 together and a yarn over. So you have a decrease and you have an increase. And again, when you get to the last 4 stitches, you do a yarn over, which is an increase, a slip, slip, knit, which is your decrease, and then your knit 2. So again, it stacks up. For every increase, we have a decrease. In this pattern, row 2 and all following wrong side rows is the easy bit. So it's knit 3, purl to the last 3 stitches and knit them again. Here again, you get the instructions as row 3 and 5 are the same as row 1. And then you get into the point. So on row 7, suddenly the yarn over is changing, or so the yarn over in the brackets are changing. They're changing place. It's actually easier to see if you have a chart. So I'll put the chart is up here. So first of all, you can see over at the chart, you get row numbers. And if you can see here, you got row 1, you got row 3, you got row 5, you got 7, 9, and 11, which means that all the wrong side rows are omitted from this one. If we look back into the chart notes here, so if you're looking in the chart notes, you can see all wrong side even numbered rows is your knit 3, purl to the last 3, and knit 3. So a lot of people prefer the written instructions. But see, as soon as they start learning how to read the pattern, the chart, most people prefer the chart. So let me just show you what's also with a chart. You will get these, the abbreviations. So you have your plain squares, they're just your knit. The circles are your yarn over. Then the wee square line going from left to right, that's your knit 2 together. The wee line that goes from right to left, that is your slip, slip, knit. And that wee triangle that's up here, that is your slip 1, knit 2 together and pass slip stitch over. So basically you're reducing 2 stitches here, and you can see on this one that you have 2 yarn overs next to that stitch, which means that you have a decrease of 2, but you also have 2 increases. So again, the math adds up in this one. So yeah, this is a very kind of straightforward pattern. It's only, I think it's 41 stitches, so you only have 5 repeats of that in. So it's a really, really good beginner one. I will show you another one. This is from Tin Can Knit. This is a free pattern, and I would actually highly recommend, if you're just starting out, that this is a good one to start off with. So let me just show you another one that is from, again, it's from Tin Can Knit. You can see it's a lot more. It's a shawl, this one. And when you have many more sections in this pattern, you can see here is the chart for that one. even though that is a lovely chart, it might not be the one you would want to start off with. So this chart and this is just some of them. You have even more on the other side. So you got basically should be a B as well. So it's probably something missing here, but it's quite a few charts. Again, there's not much difference. You have knit, yarn over, make 1, knit 2 together, slip, slip, knit 3 together. You have your slip 1, knit 2 together, pass, slip, stitch over. So it's not that it has a few more than the other, techniques than the other one, but it's not like a lot more. It's more difficult to kind of navigate this one because it has so many different parts to it. So one thing I wanted to show you as well, something that can make your life just a little bit easier when navigating a lace pattern, is that we go back to the easy one here. So you got your side or your edges here, and then you got your repeats. So for a lot of people, especially when you start off with, you can put stitch markers in. So you got different ones. So you got these I love these love heart ones. You also got your locking stitch markers. So both these stitch markers are really good. What you can do is, so if you want to put stitch markers on while you have your stitches on your needles, you need to go for the locking markers, because they can basically be kind of slipped onto, and then you just lock them. So they're just kind of dangling on your needles. You're not going to knit into them or get them into the fabric. You keep having them on your needle. So the way to separate your make it easier for yourself and separate these parts into is by putting here. I can slip a marker on, and then I can do my, oops, I can see that I was not quite finished here. So you actually got a yarn over here. So then you can, so in the first bit you have 5 stitches. So you have knit, knit, knit 2 together, yarn over and a knit. Then slip your marker on. The next bit here is your slip, slip, knit. Let me just get my yarn here. So there we go. So that's your slip, slip, knit. You then got a knit, knit, yarn over, knit, yarn over, knit, and then you have you're going to your knit 2 together and knit 1. Then put another marker on. Oops. And then we're going back to repeating that. So again, we got a slip, slip, and knit. You got a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, and then you got your knit 2 together, and you will slide, and knit 1, and then you slide this one on, and you have a yarn over, a slip, slip, knit, and then just knit to the end. Oh, and then obviously, so now you have your sections put in. So if you find that you come to the end of a section and you haven't done the full stitch or the full repeat, you know that it's within that section that you made a mistake, so you only have to really take that back. So I hope this makes sense. But yes, so a chart is really handy. Another way of navigating a chart is basically to have sticky notes or a ruler or something that you can kind of slide up. So here I have just a piece of paper. You can see if you have a sticky note, you can just slide it up like this, and you kind of hide the one you just done. Or if it's easier for you, you can just hide the ones that's on top, and just as you go along, just move your paper or sticky note, or even washi tape or masking tape are quite good because they're not that sticky, so they probably won't rip your paper. Again, you can always photocopy your pattern and write on that one. You could even set wee marks at the sides. But yeah, so remember, some patterns don't have the second row. I have a pattern here. Again, it's quite a complicated one, but it does show you that you have. So here you got 369. You've got the next one back, and then you got 371. So some patterns will have every row. Other patterns will basically only have every second row in a chart. But there will be a written instruction to how the wrong side rows are going to be made. So how do we measure tension in lace knitting? Because if you just took a measuring tape and it was like, how are you really going to measure all the stitches? But what we know in this pattern is that each pattern repeat are 8 stitches. So it's a good idea to measure over like maybe two repeats. And then you would know, so we know that 16 stitches here is 9 centimeters. Have to say, you really have to block it before to really know your tension. But let's just take that we have blocked this one, and 2 is 9 centimeters. What you will do is you will take, so we know that each repeat is 18 stitches, so 2 repeats are 16 stitches. So we will take 16 stitches divided by 9, and then we will time it by 10. And by that way, we then know the width, so the stitches. If we want to know the height of it, again, we will take a full pattern repeat, a full or 2 full ones if we have 2 full ones. So in this case, I unfortunately only have 1. So I will measure how much. So one pattern repeat here is actually 5 centimeters. In a pattern repeat, there are 12 rows. So that I know that 24 rows is the number of rows in my tension square. So let's move on here. There's something called a lifeline, and see, when you start off with lace knitting, this is a really good thing to use. So when you're happy, you have knitted a pattern repeat and you're pretty sure this is accurate, and just in case you're making any mistakes further on, you can put something in that's called a lifeline. It's basically just a thread, ideally like a cotton thread, or some people use fishing wire. Fishing wire is really good. However, it's very slippy. So if you put a fishing wire in, make sure you kind of tie it so it doesn't fall out, because you want it to stay in, because if you then knit further up and have to rip that part out, and you lost your lifeline, then you might have to go back. It can be a little bit tricky to fix your mistake in lace. That's why you would sometimes put a lifeline in. So here, this is what you do. So you can have like a darning needle, make sure it's a kind of blunt ended darning needle, and you're basically just running this darning needle. Obviously you have put your thread on it, you just run it through the stitches. You can do it in yeah, it can be sometimes be a little bit tricky to get it past the markers. But yeah, you will run it up. Oops. Obviously when you're live, all of this becomes that little bit more difficult. Yeah, so you just run it along here. As you can see, I'm using circular needles. You don't have to use circular needles. You can, it's fine to use straight needles in this. So here we go. Oops. I decided to just pop out the last stitch. So if I now, so now this thread is running in where my needles are, and I can now knit on. So let's just do that and I'll show you how it looks. So make sure that you, so again, you will use something that isn't hairy, because if you had like a hairy yarn as a lifeline and it was a different color, it could leave some residue of that yarn on your needle. This one is a wrong side row, so I'm just purling to the end, and I'm trying not, I am trying to not get so let me just try and clear the table here a little bit. So this is a purl row, so I'm going, or a wrong side row, so I'm just going by here. It's another, and now I'm slipping, so when I hit my markers, I'm just slipping them over from one needle to the other. So again, another marker, we just slip from one needle to the other. Oh, last 3 stitches are knit stitches. So when I turn this round, you can see that this lifeline is sitting in here. So should I make a mistake further up in the pattern, I can actually just pull my needles out. I'll show you how you can do this. So you pull your needles out and you're just ripping out, and now it's not going any further because your lifeline is actually sitting here holding all the stitches. So you can then again just put your needles back on. It's almost like if you're putting your needles on a wee holder, and you can put as many lifelines on as you like. So if you're very unsure about how you're getting on, you can almost put a lifeline in for every row you're doing, or every second row, I would say. It's maybe overdoing it a little, but if that's something you would want to do, it's you can feel free. I'm not going to judge you, based on how many lifelines you're putting in, but they are quite handy. So again, here we got a yarn over, so make sure that your needle get under. And again, now that I have a stitch that's trying to get lost here, so again I'm just pulling on my lifeline to pull that stitch out. So I was trying to slip off there, so again, and have another one of those wee cheeky ones there again. And so that's how you don't really lose your way in your knitting. I'm just going to pull my lifeline out, and then I'm going to show you another way of putting lifelines in. This way is only really if you got interchangeable needles. In your interchangeable needles, you have a wee hole where your key is going in. So when you're tightening your needle, so there's a tiny wee hole here. It's really hard to see in the camera, but you can actually put your lifeline in here. So instead of, yeah, now I put it in the wrong one. I need to be this one over here. I'm just putting it through there. So basically, I will be knitting again this row, or if you're a continental knit, or if you're a thrower, a UK knitter, you will do your, well, I always keep forgetting you have your yarn in the front and round and off and off and here. I'm a little bit slow compared to other throwers, obviously, because I'm used to knitting the continental way. So let me just for speed move back to, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's yeah, I decided to make a wee sample so you didn't have to watch me knit a whole row for the whole pattern. So here, now I got obviously my needle and my stitches. I got my lifeline attached here. So when I pull my knitting over here, then I'll just take my lifeline out of my needle, and it's sitting here, ready to catch should I further up be making a mistake. So that is a lifeline, and they are really, really great to use. So I think we'll move on to the blocking. Blocking is, I'm just going to, yeah, so blocking is essential for lace, because when you're knitting lace like here, I'll just switch back again. I have another wee sample here. So this is actually done in lace weight yarn. When you knitted the lace, it's still kind of crunched up a bit. So you really want to open. It's going to be looking much better when you're stretching this one out. So when you're blocking, there's lots of different items you can use. So first of all, you will need to have your well, first of all, you do need to weave in your end, because when you're blocking your final piece, you want the sewn in end to stretch as much as the knitted. So don't do your blocking and then sew in your end. That's a bad idea. So yeah, when you ideally want to use like a blocking mat. So a blocking mat often comes like these puzzles. It's actually the same as these children's kind of jigsaws you can buy. The children's jigsaws tend to be cheaper than blocking mats. This is a Knit Pro one, And I'm really sorry to say I'm not a huge fan of this one because it doesn't have measurements. But so yeah, you will use, they come often as a set of 9, so they will just kind of slide together. So for this one, I will slide this one together. Another thing you would use for blocking is T-pins. So if you're blocking anything, with points, T-pins are essential. So here, this is one of your T-pins. And then wires, or these knit blockers, are excellent. So these wee comb blockers here, you get them the long ones and you'll get the slightly smaller ones. So initially, let's get this blocked out. So before you block, what you want to do is you want to soak this. So it needs to be kind of wet blocked. So soak it in lukewarm water. If this is so you soak it because you need it to, so when it dries, so when you pinned it out and it dries, then it stays flat and it opens up the lace. So it's just, yarn becomes much more kind of moldable when it's wet. So yes, soak it in lukewarm water. If this is like a hand dyed one that's multicolored, put a little bit of white wine vinegar in it, in the water as well, and don't let it soak more than 10-15 minutes, because then after that the colours can start to bleed into each other. So it still needs to be soaked. Also, if you want to wash your garment as your block, before you block it, you can put a little bit of wool wash in it. So the one we have in the shop is this Eucalan. It's a no rinse wool wash, and this one is, even though this bottle is really, really small, there is actually about 20 washes in this one. You only use like 5 millimeters, so your wee kind of medicine spoon, the big end of the medicine spoon, that's enough for 4 liters of water. Again, you can use hair conditioner as well. Yeah. So when this is soaked for like 10-15 minutes, you take it out and you kind of gently kind of squeeze the water out. You do not start rinsing it, because again, the wool is kind of at its most delicate point of this, so you can actually snap while you're handling. And so if you're kind of really rinsing it, that's really just such a bad idea. Again, it can stretch, and you spend hours making a lovely lace shawl maybe, and you don't want to ruin it at that point. So just be gentle, squeeze it out. What you do next is you put it in a towel, and then you roll the towel up, and then you start again squeezing the water out. Change towel, do this twice, because then you will dry it even further. So when you have done that, you lay your lace out on your blocking board. Ideally, you can use a bed. You can also use a rug or even cardboard, but if you're using cardboard, use a wee towel underneath. So then you're ready to start pinning it out. And obviously, if it's in the evening, you wouldn't want to use your bed because it have to dry until it's completely 100%. Well, it have to dry until it's 100% dry, really. So when you start pinning this out, I think I'll do this over on this side first. You start with pinning the points. Can you see that? So here you got 1 point, and you're really just stretching it out. I'm just moving this over, so just give it a really good stretch. So do your points first. The reason why you're using these T-pins is they are much more, they're much stronger than normal pins. And when your lace is blocking, again, you just stretch this out, and so just be really aggressive. You can already see that the lace is starting to show up a bit more prominent. So now I will go kind of in the middle here. So I'm using these combs. You could use blocking wire, you could wind blocking wire, and it's unfortunately not something I have in the shop at the moment. But yeah, so these pins, and then just pin it in really nice and tight, and just again up here, okay, in your kind of straight line. So yeah, the T-pins are for your points, and the kind of comb blockers. I love these rainbow ones. You do your straight lines. So again here, when you're just really give it a good stretch, your knitting can handle it. You can start seeing how it really start taking shape here. I might actually just go a bit closer to that one, and then do a smaller one. So yeah, you can be quite aggressive with the blocking. What the fabric again will, while it's drying, it will start kind of pulling in. So these blockers here, I would say go and check on your knitting, because they could pop out because of the knitting starting to kind of contract. And also when you take this off, it will kind of pull back in again. So that's why you're blocking quite aggressively. So you can see how nice this has opened up from when it was just knitted. So yeah, so when you need to leave it until it's 100% dry. So in a lace yarn, that shouldn't take too long. But if you're doing some lace in an Aran weight like this that we were using before, that that would take a little bit longer to dry. So but these foam boards are really great because again you can place them together. So I'll just show you here. So basically there you got your block that. You could probably even over on this side here, you could probably even pull it a bit more. So just keep kind of maneuvering it until you're quite happy that it looks nice and spread out. So yeah, that is really how you block. So yes, so if you do remove it before it's fully dried, the blocking isn't going to be as effective. And also remember that blocking is really for natural fibers. Acrylics, you can block them and they'll just tend to spring back into how they were knitted. So yeah, blocking is natural fibers, really. So where do you start? So if you're a complete beginner, I do suggest you go in and do some lace. Something where the repeat is only a couple of rows. So again, the Gothic shawl from Tin Can Knit, the Gothic lace is a really good. You can also go into Ravelry and have a wee look at what other patterns they have. They are quite good. Or if you do fancy kind of diving into to lace yarn, so the one I was stretching out was actually this pattern here. I might actually show it on this. So that is the one. It is super beautiful in the kit silk keys. If you're looking on Ravelry, you will see this one is called Moat, but on Ravelry it's actually called Birch. So they have given it a couple of different names. It was initially made for the kit silk case, I believe. But when they brought out this denim lace, which is a discontinued yarn, they reknitted it in the denim lace. So, but yeah, you can use any lace weight yarn to do this one. But be aware that lace yarn is not everyone's cup of tea. I have a couple of students I've had in my classes recently. They bought some lace yarn and they're just really struggling. So if you want to do it in lace and haven't really worked in such a fine yarn before, I would say go gradually down in size. So if you're normally working in Aran and double knit, maybe start off with the double knit, Aran or double knit, and then gradually move into 4-ply and then eventually lace, because lace it is really, really fine, and it can be I've had a few people who said, oh, they weren't really too keen on knitting with it. So yes, I think kind of work yourself kind of up to it. That is the best way. So I think that is really what I had. So yeah, we've had a really good walkthrough for the lace. So if there is any kind of questions. So yeah, this lesson will be recorded, and so you have access to it as a recording. So if there's no questions, then I think I'm going to wrap up for today. And thank you so much for joining. And again, I'm here, so you can drop me a wee email if you have any questions as well. But yeah, that was all for today. Bye bye.